Okay, now that we've proven that our Shelly is working, it's communicating via MQTT, we can turn it off and on. Let's just connect that to the logic of our sprinkler system as opposed to using these inject nodes. So let's move this over for a second. Could use it in a moment. And what we're going to do, instead of turning this on and off manually, we're going to plug into here our start check, which has this off and on path. So here's our off path, contains stopped, and what that says is delay 2 seconds and then send the next one, if there is one, to the queue. And this one is basically our on path. It says this zone is on, reset 1 tick value, basically draw down that gauge, that water gauge that shows how much water the zone has left to sprinkle. So this we'll use for off and on instead of these inject nodes. So let's take a change node and drag it in here. And we're going to say turn off. And we're going to set message payload to off. And go ahead and copy this. And we'll say turn on, set message payload to on. And connect these to the appropriate places. So this is off. And this is on. And while we're here, we're going to put a debug node in. And we'll show this in a second. And we're going to say complete message object. And connect that to both of our outputs here. Let's go ahead and delete these. We don't need them anymore. And before we can plug into MQTT, we need to tell it which zone we're using. So let's drag in a switch node. And we're going to add 4 conditions for the 4 different zones. Let's call this zone name check. Property is message.name. And the different conditions are zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4. Plug both these into here. And now we could do a couple things here. We could represent one zone with one Shelly, which if you had multiple Shellys, that's probably what you would do. Turn each one on or off. Each one is a zone. But in this case, let's just plug all into the same Shelly so we can see this working. This one Shelly will represent all the zones. And let's go ahead and deploy and see if this is working. I'll clear this debug. So deployed. Go to my dashboard here. And let's go ahead and turn some of these zones explicitly on. Set the duration, something short. And I'm going to hold the Shelly up to the microphone, and let's start our sprinkler. You can hear it turning off and on. Okay, so that worked beautifully. Let's trace this a little bit and make sure that we understand it. So here's our debug node they put in here. And the reason I put this in here is because we take a look at it. So this is our output. And this is the last zone. We can see the payload we're getting out of here is stopped. In this change node, we're switching that payload to off because that's what MQTT expects. That's what the Shelly expects. And we're also, in the switch node here, we're checking message.name. And here is message.name. Here's where that's contained. So zone 4 indicates that it's zone 4. So that message object is passing through here. We're changing message.payload a little bit. We're not changing message.name, but we are checking message.name here. And because this indicates, for example, that it's zone 4, it would come out through zone 4. And right now they're all going to our MQTT, to the same Shelly via MQTT. But you can see how if you have multiple Shellys, you can control multiple different zones.